Also, I just thought, moving in silence, low-key, Jesus, when he was a carpenter.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Ultimate example of
Yeah.
moving in silence.
Absolutely.
Ding, ding, ding. Why would you go to clone instead of plastic surgery?
There have been these theories that major celebrities and political figures died long ago and have since been replaced by clones.
That's what we do with our stories is we talk about the boogeyman in the closet, the things that scare us so that we can better understand our lives.
And there's something really spiritually good about giving ourselves to something like that, to commit to something,
trying.
to commit to suffering.
Yeah. How can we tell when something is something we need to push through or something that we should walk away from? Jim Carrey reacts to being called a clone, what parents should know about the new Resident Evil video game, and why people are still talking about Alysa Liu's Olympic performance. Welcome to the Roundtable. I'm Evan Barber, and I'm here today with CJ Fant, Irene Tucker, and welcoming back to the podcast, Jenna Mendel. Jenna, great to have you.
Thanks.
This week's Slang of the Week is a phrase that Jenna brought to our attention earlier this week. The phrase, moving in silence. Jenna, tell us about this phrase. What does it mean?
Yeah, so this has been a phrase that's kind of been in circulation amongst the, dare I say, youth. I feel like when I say youth, then I sound like I am 80 years old. But this has been something that's been said over the last couple of years, and then I realized the team didn't know, so I figure it was time to share a little bit more. But the concept is really keeping a personal, professional, whatever, any sort of kind of like project or endeavor close to your chest. Think about like the concept of keeping your cards close to your chest. It's pretty much the same, but you're moving in silence. What's ironic is once you declare that you're moving in silence, you are therefore not
You've
moving
broken
in silence.
the silence.
Yeah. So like an example would be you're absolutely grinding at the gym, but you're telling no one. Versus like for me, I go to the gym. I'm like, oh my gosh, I've texted my husband, my best friend. Like everyone knows I'm being so healthy and awesome. But then moving in silence would be like, I'm not going to tell anybody. But then summer comes and it's going to be a beach day and they're going to be like, whoa, you have really big muscles.
Hot girl summer.
Exactly. So that would be an example of moving in silence, but it's often just used comedically. Like really, if you do anything and you don't tell your friend, it's like, oh, are you moving in silence about that? Just because Gen Z and Gen Alpha are just conditioned to share everything online.
It sounds so cool though. Like I'm moving in silence. Like if you tell that to yourself, like I'm moving in silence with my
And this all came from Evan talking about how he doesn't let people read his drafts.
That's right.
And I said that he was moving in silence.
That's right.
Of like, he was like kind of, he wasn't sharing an idea of an essay he was writing. And I was like, oh, you're moving in silence.
Yeah. But the idea, it's not you keep it silent forever. It's you keep it silent until you have succeeded and then you perform at that point.
And just like, oh yeah, I crushed this.
Okay. So it's perpetuating the idea that didn't take any effort. It just showed up like magic.
Easy.
Is that true?
Oh, yeah. I think there's also a dynamic where it's like, oh, you're mysterious.
100%.
Like you're like you don't need to tell people things to be validated by them. So there isn't necessarily like, oh, it was effortless. It's like, no, I worked at this, but I didn't need people to like gas me up.
So how is this different than cocoon maxing? Because it's cocoon. That's a little bit of a throwback.
I've never even heard of that.
It's not a real. It's just something CJ and I made up.
Well,
we did it, Evans. We're making culture.
Slang. That's how it starts.
But
we should make it viral.
I mean, yeah.
What were we talking about when we came up with that? Because it was the idea of
moving in silence.
Well, essentially, yes.
Yeah.
But it's you keep what you're doing a secret until you emerge as from a cocoon like a butterfly.
Beautiful.
Cocoon maxing is such a great word. I thought it was real.
No, it's not. Well,
fantastic.
Great
guys.
work on that, CJ.
I don't remember that we made that up. I also don't know if we made that up, actually.
We
but
made it up.
We got to look it up. Hey, Jordan, our podcaster producer, can you look that up and tell us if it's real or
Sure.
not?
Fact check if this word that
it's not.
I'm pretty sure we made up
I've never heard someone
is
say
real.
Well, Jenna's never heard it.
I've never heard it, so that means it's not real.
Jenna's 24, so.
But I think it would be the same thing. I think by cocoon maxing, we were talking about you work on yourself for a long enough stretch of time, and then you reveal your wonderful self who is new and improved out to the world.
I love it. I kind of love this idea.
I think we were talking about Sigma. That's what we were talking about.
Sigma.
We were talking about Sigma.
Don't bring that up.
All of the implications of like a Sigma male is like you hide you're like hiding what you're doing.
I can't.
Is it real?
In terms of like,
what's the update? Cocoon maxing.
Cocoon maxing is not real. Maxing is real.
Hey
Maxing
guys,
is of course real.
all words are made up.
So maybe we should send it to Mr. Lindsay and like maybe he can like throw it to his class.
That's
and
not
then,
how
like,
that works.
I know, but like you never know. He's got influence. Maybe he can coin a word.
Why is moving in silence so hard to do?
I think a lot of it just comes from social media culture. Like the idea of like you would not go to a concert, go on a trip. You wouldn't do anything outside of your day-to-day routine if you couldn't share it a lot of times. And so I think that there's something like really cool about like moving in silence. Similar to, we just filmed a conversation starter YouTube video yesterday about the trend of being offline, online, kind of like performatively. And this idea of like, I have all this discipline and how I think that's going to become increasingly valuable because it's something that can't be bought. And it feels like everything else you can buy. So I think that's a lot of it.
Okay. You know, it doesn't exactly seem like this is necessarily about virtue signaling, but it did remind me of Jesus's words where he's like, when you're given to the needy, don't even let your left hand know what your right hand is doing. It's like, keep the thing a secret.
Jesus said to move in silence.
Jesus,
it sounds like.
in a way, yes.
There's something really valuable about it. Jenna and I went out with some of my friends. We just went out for dinner. We were hanging out, and I have a really good friend who is this way, that I feel like he's always doing something. He's always grinding on something that he doesn't really talk about ever. And so he'll just enter into a conversation where he's like, oh yeah, I've read that like massive book, or like, oh, I like went through this whole series, or I watched this whole thing, or whatever it is. And I'm always like, wait, what? Like you're my best friend. Like I probably know you more outside of your wife. I probably know you better than anyone else in the world. And he's like, yeah, I just like don't talk about it. And they're almost, to me, sometimes in my selfishness, I'm like, I want to know those things about your life. Yeah. But also, I also like there's like a sense of humility that comes out of it, which I think is what you're saying, where he doesn't really need to share that he's like trying to do these things or reading all these philosophy books or going to the gym all the time. And I actually deeply appreciate that. There's almost like this weird perspective, like the Renaissance man who just like kind of he's good at a lot of things, you know, and I don't necessarily feel that way about myself, but my friend, I'm often like, yeah, Mitch is that way.
Yeah, that's cool.
Shout out to Mitch.
Shout out.
Yeah, like I feel conflicted about it sometimes, because sometimes I do feel a little bit of FOMO that I'm like, wait, I want to know that you're doing these things. We could have talked about this. But at the same time, I deeply respect the hustle.
The hustle.
Yeah.
But it sometimes seems like if you don't move in silence, I feel like the motivation to continue could be just like sucked into the social affirmation. I don't know if that makes sense, but it's like if I say too soon, hey, I'm starting a new workout regimen every 3 days a week for the rest of the year, then it's like as soon as I say that, I've almost promised too much. It's like part of my brain thinks I've already done it or something.
Totally. I've seen a lot of like TikToks talking about that specifically, and how, let's say you want to start a Substack, a podcast, whatever, you get like so much energy, like if Mitch was to tell you that, like telling like, oh my gosh, and it almost feels like maybe you already did it.
Right.
Like you don't get the reward of like doing it and working toward it and then being like, look at this thing I made. Like let's work on it together, kind of thing.
What's that?
I think that's a problem.
Well, what's that? There's an obscure parable of Jesus. No one ever talks about it, but it's the one where he's like,
new parable just dropped.
Where he's like, two servants were asked to go do a thing. Yeah. One of them said, yes, I'll do it. And then he didn't. The other one said, no, I'm not going to do that. But then he actually did do it.
Really confusing.
Yeah. But I think I've heard
the
Kierkegaard
one said he wasn't going to do it and then he did it?
Yeah. The one who said, I'm not going to do that. Huh. It's the way I've heard Kierkegaard interpret this.
Oh,
not
he's
to
not
go
moving
there.
in silence about his reading.
It is like the person who says, yes, I'll do it, is like mollified by his commitment.
Right.
Yeah.
Whereas the person who's like, no, I'm not going to do that. Actually, something about that wakes him up, and then he ends up going and doing it. So there can almost be like if you
Faith
promise too
integration.
much,
come on,
you know, like if you promise too much, if you commit too much out loud, it actually can get in the way of your ability to actually do it.
Yeah.
Totally. Like if you posted your New Year's resolutions, like your really detailed ones on your Instagram, it would feel good because you'd be like, look at me and all this awesome stuff I'm going to do.
Yeah.
Post them at the end of the year when you've done them all. You know?
Ooh.
Yeah.
Yes, mama.
So maybe Jenna can attest to this because you were talking about it a little bit with like working out and like I'm going to tell all my friends. I feel like there's also like, for me personally, I want the like, often it is motivating to have some social dynamic in what I do. And so I struggle with this. I'm often someone who has lots of fun ideas but never does them. So I share my ideas with friends and then I get like lots of fun feedback and it's a lot of fun. And I'm like, yes, this would be really fun to do. And then I just don't do it because when I get home and I'm by myself, I feel no motivation. I am very motivated by relationships.
Yeah.
I don't think that's a negative way to be motivated by something. I show up because the people I like are there. And that's like, I want to spend time with them. Yeah. And that's even nice. Like work, like that's a thing I process where it's like, want to be able to do things by myself. I want to be able to move in silence, but I enjoy it more if it's like, well, I get to go to work and I get to see Evan and Irene and Jenna or whatever it is. Like that is something that is enjoyable for me. I struggle to do things just for the sake of doing things and the joy of doing it. Yeah. Right?
You're saying the idea of moving in silence can tilt individualistic.
Yeah. And the truth is I want to be able to do more things out of my own motivation.
Like emerge and just be able to play the piano.
Yeah. But it's hard sometimes. And so sometimes it's knowing yourself and saying, how do I like create some sort of relational dynamic here that will help me push through and continue to do it? Because once you start doing it, you might be able to do it on your own. But
what if rather than like sharing with the world, you have like one person that you could move in silence with the world, but you've got like one person where like, hey, I really want to work on this and do this. Can you help me be accountable? It can still kind of be both. Like if that's something that.
So it's like moving at low volume.
I mean,
moving at low volume.
I barely post anything on social media, but I get your point.
Yes, exactly.
As like a general.
Yeah, me either.
That's part of why I really wanted to talk about this phrase because there's so much to it. I mean, there's so many implications for what it means about how we live life and be in the world. So
even two parables.
There's even two, which not every slang term gets two parables. So this is a special one. Moving in silence, ladies and gentlemen. Check it out. First thing from the top three. Last week, Jim Carrey accepted the honorary César Award at the César Awards ceremony in France. In addition to the fact that he gave a full speech in French, which apparently he practiced for 8 months. That's what I've understood.
So cute.
Dude, that's moving in silence.
Come on. I would be like,
learning
a
speech in French without telling anyone. You're like, I'm just going to show up and say this in French.
It takes boldness.
He did this. He also, at least according to many viewers, looked just different enough that a portion of the internet felt sure they were seeing a clone or impersonator. I guess, perhaps slightly imperfect clone would be the logic, because he looked just different enough
a little bit different,
from the original Jim Carrey. Because why wouldn't "this is probably a clone" be one of the first things people think?
Okay, to the world's credit, Jim Carrey did do an interview once where he said, "The next time you see me, it's going to be a clone." In his like silly, Jim Carrey nonsense way. So you never know. Like it sounds like a stunt that Jim Carrey could pull. You know what I mean? Or would like try to pull.
I didn't realize that he said that. That actually adds another layer of absurdity.
Maybe he has like a French cousin.
But like,
don't we all?
James Carrey.
And he obviously had a little work done. Like he obviously had a little refresh. And he looks a little bit different.
You're talking about plastic surgery?
It looked like he had like a brow lift or something. I'm not a plastic surgeon, but he definitely had a little bit of work done. But there was his team came out with a quote, and it was or a statement, and it said, "Jim is sad, not because people are questioning or making fun of his appearance. He's not worried about that at all. Aww. Rather, he is sad that people are stupid." I think that was so funny.
Man,
it's so funny.
It can make a person sad. That reaction. So there are people who were purposefully trying to stoke the confusion. We can say there was a makeup artist named Alexis Stone
This was crazy.
who suggested that it was actually him. That it was Alexis Stone who stepped on stage in a Jim Carrey face mask.
And he had like a posted picture of like a latex mask or something.
Yep.
So weird.
And that he accepted the award on Jim Carrey's behalf. Apparently, Megan Fox commented on the post where this claim was made and said, quote, "I can't handle any more stress right now. I need to know if this is real," which definitely reads like someone on the edge of sanity, which is kind of what this whole topic feels like to me.
Oh my gosh. I didn't know about her comment. That's unreal.
That is actually really funny.
And of course, Irene, can you tell us a little bit about the cloning conspiracy more broadly? I mean, this is not the first time that people have thought, oh, probably a clone.
I mean, I don't think they meant like a real clone. I think they more meant like a doppelganger.
I think they meant a real clone.
What?
People think that people get like switched.
Yes.
That's like more what I
Yes.
see of like.
Really?
Which
There's, I mean, that would be the people are stupid thought process, and that
Like
I
the
can
tin hat
understand.
situation.
yeah, that is what Carrey is responding to in that people. He's making a statement about conspiracy theorists.
So
is maybe the way to put it.
It's a question of always the question of how many people actually are thinking like this versus is this just a
small minority
subset with a very extreme perspective
Yep.
that is dominating the discourse, and it's hard to tell because of the way the internet prioritizes extremism.
Why would you go to clone instead of plastic surgery?
Well, so for many years there have been. And I'll go into this.
Yeah, let's do it.
Seems like I'm on the spot here. There have been these theories that major celebrities and political figures, including people like Katy Perry, Kanye West, Joe Biden, Hillary Clinton, died long ago, and have.
I'm agreeing with you. I know these theories.
I've heard
Yes.
this, but just like hearing
Yes.
it
Yes.
in this language, I'm just like, wow.
Died long ago and have since been replaced by clones for reasons which may include the originals woke up to deep state corruption, perhaps on some level, and had to be killed and replaced with clones who wouldn't contest the status quo. Putting out clones also allows the execution of public figures to be covered up. You look so disappointed.
It's just
So
dumb.
part of the fuel to this fire is that Jim Carrey has said some pretty negative comments about Hollywood. And then the flip on this is that he shows up to accept that award and he's very positive about Hollywood.
But it's a French thing, right?
Yeah,
so it's a little.
That's some of the chatter I've seen online that he's been like replaced to like be more positive for the Hollywood elite, like that sort of language that comes up when you talk about these sorts of theories.
Yep.
Interesting.
And yeah, like for sure, it's been interesting because Jim Carrey was like, I'm not gonna act again unless it's a really good role.
Yeah.
And the really good role that brings him back is
Sonic.
Sonic 3, which was a very good role. I'm not.
paying.
Yes.
I think he said something like,
Yeah.
I needed the paycheck.
So for sure, like Jim Carrey,
Totally.
one often says things and maybe doesn't fully think through them. Like the next time you see me, it'll be a clone, which is a funny bit. That's a funny bit. But then suddenly it turns into a firestorm of, okay, how do we talk about this in a way that's like helpful, but also like not, because it's easy to laugh at the ridiculousness of conspiracy theories in a lot of situations. But there are people that this genuinely they think about all of the time.
Yeah.
And it's worth pointing that out. And it affects the way that they see the world and the way that their peace, honestly, like it affects their peace,
Yep.
And stuff like this, it's like the internet is not helpful in terms of helping people sort through information and kind of just figure out what is maybe more solid to stand on versus maybe more just, hey, I just said this on the internet because I can say things on the internet. Like, it was me. I showed up at this award show because I'm a good makeup artist who has done impersonations of people. So
I feel like off of some of what you're getting at there, CJ, one of the things that this speaks to, in my view, is just the human desire to be a part of a struggle against good and evil. Right?
Yeah.
There's this like, I think this is part of the biblical worldview that there is a struggle that it says is not against flesh and blood, but against like the powers and principalities. To bring in my third scripture reference of the episode,
dude, you're getting an A and a gold star
A+.
at
And
the
here-
end of this
Best Christian in
podcast.
the room, definitely. Way to go.
not exactly moving in silence. Anyway.
Would he
And-
be a Theo bro? No, is that Jetta taught me about Theo bros
He's not
yesterday.
Evan's
no,
not a Theo bro.
Evan's not a Theo bro.
Okay.
Yeah.
Also, I just thought, moving in silence, low key, Jesus,
Yeah.
when he was a carpenter.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Ultimate
Oh, for sure.
example of
Yeah.
moving in silence.
Absolutely.
Ding ding ding.
Lived the first, far as we know, 30 years of his life in obscurity.
No,
Also,
and I love that.
40 days in the wilderness by yourself to start your ministry.
Totally moving
Yeah.
in silence. It's
Okay.
crazy work.
So
Because
Rewind, go back to your cool thought.
Back to Jim
Sorry.
Carrey. I don't know. I don't know if that seems true to you guys, but that's what I kind of detect under some of this, like, they're killing public figures and replacing them with clones, and we don't know who they are, but it's this shadowy, mysterious figure that we have to deal with. Something like that. It just feels like there's a desire in humanity to be a part of good versus evil on some level. Does that seem fair?
Yeah.
Or am I
Yes.
going too far?
No,
Yeah,
that's-
no, I think that's fair.
Universal agreement?
The room agrees.
CJ?
Maybe.
Yeah. I think they would. I think even people who are like deep in that world would also agree with you. And they see it very clearly as, I need to share this truth with other people, and by truth I mean this worldview and this perspective that they have, that they see this is true. Like, and why aren't other people awake to this?
Yeah.
And it becomes almost like a sort of evangelism.
Yeah.
Like, I need to share the reality of the world with people.
Right.
In the same way, like, and it often is like, often conflated in a similar way of like, we need to tell people about sin and like, like the God, like people often conflate the two things, and they're not the same thing, just to be clear. But that's how the thinking, that's how it happens. And these are often people who genuinely care about it, and so it's worth, like, there's lots. I've thought about this a lot. This stuff really fascinates me, and the reasons why people kind of dive into conspiracy theory, kind of the holes and the kind of the depths of them. And it gets a little scary sometimes when you really look at it in the face, but I think it's worth, like, people care about stuff, and that's part of why people get into these spaces. But
I love what you're saying, though. Like, to not just, I mean, I think there's a lot of conspiracy theories that are believable and potentially true, but like not to hear something and then just, like, as I did initially, just dismiss it. Oh, that's dumb. Like, looking at the person's heart, like, what are you struggling with, and why do you have that fear? Where's that root? And then, like, connecting with someone's, like, humanity and understanding, like, their fears is maybe
Totally.
a better place to stand, rather than going, well, that's such a dumb thing to believe. So I think that's great.
curious from, like, the teen perspective, or like even your sons, like, how do you think they would respond to this conspiracy theory? Like, would they think it's fun to, because I think about, like, the kind of ridiculous and kind of meant to be ridiculous, like, birds aren't real conversation, where it's like, it's fun to, like, birds aren't real, or Jim Carrey's a clone. Or do you think they would maybe just dismiss it offhand?
We've had a discussion about clones with my son Dawson, and he believes that technology is there and that it quite possibly has been done.
Yeah.
I don't think you can pop up a 50-year-old man out of nowhere like a machine. I think that there's some cellular growth, and like we can do some things.
It's very sci-fi.
Yeah, that actually kind of blow your mind, like growing organs and tissue and all that stuff. But so I think there's interesting conversation to be had when talking about cloning. Like, and you can't clone a soul. You know what I mean? So I think there's like,
So listen, there's a lot of sci-fi about that. If you would like to engage with it.
so I think there's great conversation. If anything, conspiracy theories are fun to converse about. I think, and it's a great way to be able to engage your kids in something.
Yeah.
Totally. And two, I forget what part of your brain it is, but my mom and I have talked about this with family members that have drug abuse, alcohol abuse in your past. It can impact the part of your brain that can kind of discern conspiracy from reality. And so it's also important to keep empathy open toward people that are genuinely like distraught
Sure.
about conspiracy theories
Yeah.
because they might not have the tools to actually understand
Yeah.
the difference. So that's also at play. I don't think that's most people, but I think for a lot of teens, it's like, I remember when I was in high school, like conspiracy theories were so funny. Just being like, oh my gosh, what do you think? Like, and it being like a funny conversation. But for a lot of people who they do feel conspired against in a lot of ways. And there are things that we don't know about. And so I think there's this sense of like, I can control this if I know. And so I think just being open to that as well. And that's a reality for some people.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's an important layer of context. Irene, what's a conversation starter about this if someone wanted to go into some of these chats?
I mean, I think starting with, if you hear a conspiracy theory, do you automatically dismiss it or do you do some investigating? And what way do you go about doing that? Is that something you naturally do or do you just brush it off? I think it would be a fun place to just start about conspiracy theories in general. And then if you want to deep dive into the rabbit hole of cloning, good luck.
Right. This podcast is made possible because of our generous donor community, which is called The Table. Tables represent many wonderful things in our world. They stop gravity from pulling our food and drinks clattering down into the floor. Aslan died on a table for the sins of Narnia. Tables provide a place to break bread and converse with the ones we love. And now, The Table is helping us support more parents and caring adults through culture translation. If you'd like to learn more about that, click the link in the show notes. We want you to know that week in, week out, our goal is to be there for you, helping to research culture, helping to create conversation starters, having intentional conversations. So if this is helpful for you, we'd love to invite you to be a part of what we're doing, to subscribe, share with someone who could benefit, and let us know what you think. All right, next up, Resident Evil Requiem, the 9th installment in the popular video game franchise, was released last week to high acclaim and a high number of players. CJ, tell us about this game, Resident Evil Requiem. How would you summarize the plot in 15 seconds?
15 seconds. FBI agent gets kidnapped because she's special and then has to escape from an asylum, and then Leon is there.
Okay.
That's
Who's Leon?
Leon Kennedy, the protagonist of Resident Evil 2 and Resident Evil 4. Fan favorite, general, very, like hot video game guy who wears quarter zips and shoots zombies. Cool guy.
If you were
cool
to
video
explain
game
it
man.
to a mom that does not know anything about Resident Evil.
So I'll start. I kind of want to start from the beginning to talk about Resident Evil because I actually think the context for Resident Evil is really important. So zombie games have been a genre for a long time. Resident Evil is one of the most influential and iconic of all of them. But I think about a game like Last of Us, which Irene is pretty familiar with. We made a video about Last of Us. Resident Evil and Last of Us are not in the same genre of like storytelling, is maybe the way to put it. So the original Resident Evil, you go to a manor, you're like a special team of you're like special ops. You go to a manor and then there's zombies and you figure out that a company has been making zombies because they're trying to like solve
because they were trying to clone someone and it just didn't work out.
It's a horror game and it's got a lot of violence. There's like zombie dogs that are like famously very scary in that game. Ooh. But then there's all this very tongue-in-cheek humor. There's a part where you almost get squished in like a room that collapses like Star Wars style.
Oh, like the trash compactor?
Yes, and Barry, one of the characters, famously says to his coworker, "You were almost a Jill sandwich," which is like one of the most iconic voice lines in a video game ever. It's just so dumb and like funny.
Is his coworker named Jill?
Her name is Jill.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Jill Valentine.
It's a crucial piece of context there that I did not have.
Also, he also calls her the master of lockpicking when she opens a door with a lockpick. And so there's all this like weird translation that has kind of, this series kind of has this very tongue-in-cheek humor where there's just very ridiculous things that happen in the game. It's a little over the top. It's very campy, but it also is very horrifying and very violent in spaces. So it has this kind of this like tension and then relief that's like through humor, which I think a lot of people have talked about how like those are actually similar places in our brains of like this relief that we have. And so the series has kind of oscillated in that. So sometimes the games are a little bit more silly. Sometimes they're a little bit darker and scarier. Like Resident Evil 7, not very not very silly, very, very dark and scary.
So the phrase Resident Evil
Yeah.
refers to the zombies.
I mean, it's just a general
Living in
name
a place?
for the game.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it doesn't really have a particular meaning.
No, I mean, yeah, like it's just the name of the game. Why does anything have the name?
But like, is the
Why
antagonist
does
the
it
Resident
have a name?
Evilness, or is
No.
it? Okay, got it.
No.
What about the mamas that are worried about the evil?
Yeah.
Yeah. What about that?
I mean, so that's what I'm trying to say. So Resident Evil 9 kind of it walks that line. It's probably more on the kind of dark horror side of things. So kind of in the newer Resident Evil games, which is the new style is 7, 8, and 9. There's more of an emphasis on kind of body horror and people being changed into something like so there's lots of these gigantic monsters that are like, oh, they've been infected with all of these different cells. It's very biological. And so, and they've grown out of proportion and they're like these hulking monsters that are kind of like weird amalgamations of different things. And the series have always had these. So there's these kind of grotesque images, but then sometimes they die in very ridiculous ways. And so it's worth pointing out that there is a lot of it's a pretty violent game in that way.
Bit of gore.
Yeah, but
it sounds like.
This is always something that I think is worth talking about, but I think sometimes people don't fully understand this in some ways. A lot of these games are engaging in slapstick humor in a way that like the Last of Us games do not do that. It's like very gritty and like, oh, it's survival. Where in these games, it's almost like so over the top that it's funny. Now, I understand so many people would be like, that person just exploded. That's not funny. Right. And I totally understand that. But I'm trying to help people understand the appeal of these games for a lot of people is it's a little over the top. It's a little corny in that way, but it's also like often very scary. And so it works on social media where people are reacting to a monster coming out of the darkness and grabbing the character. And it's like, oh, that's scary horror. But then there's also all these ridiculous things that happen in a little bit like a slasher film where slasher films are scary, but there's also these
Maybe like Scream or something.
Well, yeah, I mean, but even like Friday the 13th, that is part of the draw of it. It is not like a parody in the way that Scream is, but it is like this is ridiculous. These characters are so over the top. They're such facsimiles of real, like they're so over the top. And I'm trying to think of the word, but
I like facsimiles.
yeah. So
It's a good word.
So I will say when it comes to 9, that's worth pointing out, but it's also one of the biggest game releases right now. So there's just going to be a lot of people paying attention to it, which is part of the reason we wrote about it.
Well, and so you touched on this a bit, but what is it that people like so much about it? 'Cause it's getting really good reviews.
Yeah.
You talked about some people think it's funny, was what I kind of took you to be saying.
I think that people come to the Resident Evil franchise with a little bit of that expectation.
Okay.
That there's going to be a little bit of humor. It's going to be a little bit ridiculous. But yeah, so I think this is always what happens with video games. It's a good game. It is fun to play. That is probably the primary reason people will play it. And you can never discount that with games. I think people think about the story and the content all the time, but games have a tactile engagement to them. Like they have to be good to play. And so a beautiful game with an amazing story, if it feels bad to play, people will not like it. Like they might come, they'll be like, wow, the story was really good, but like I just hated being in the game the whole time.
Right.
And these games are fun to play. They're good at what they're trying to do, which is survival horror. It's this genre where you have limited resources. So let's just say they give you a gun and you have 10 shots and there are 4 zombies. And you're like, how do I do this? Like, and that's the horror of it is like, I have to figure out how to survive in this space.
And it's different from a game like Fortnite, for example, which is battle royale, where there isn't really a story in the same way. Whereas with this game, it's storytelling driven.
Yeah.
You're on a sort of horrifying adventure.
Yes.
So do you need the context of the first games to play this? Is it one of those? Okay.
No, you got to play all
you
8.
can just like jump in. I was like,
You gotta
I
play
don't know if
all
I
8.
can commit to that.
No, Resident Evil games, and often games by Japanese studios, depends on the studio, but a lot of them are often less focused on, it needs to be this continuous running arc. But instead, we're working through different themes, and like a lot of the games share similar themes and similar characters. Like Leon Kennedy, this is the 3rd game he's appeared in. you don't need to play the other games to be like, I understand who Leon Kennedy is. He's this hardened mercenary, like cop. He's a cop in the first game. This hardened cop who's seen a lot of stuff, and he's grizzled now. He's got, he's got gray hair now, and still got the quarter zip though.
Still got the quarter
Still
zip.
rocking the quarter zip.
Makes sense.
My idea of a scary video game is when you play Minecraft and
Yeah.
you don't kill sheep during the day, so then you can't make a bed. And then you have, and the monsters are trying to get you, and you just have like a wooden sword.
That can be
Minecraft, in that respect, can be quite
Yeah,
horrifying.
sometimes
I would
that can
only
be
play
this-
on creative mode when I was in middle school because I couldn't deal with like the fear.
Well, this might put you in a coma.
Yeah,
but-
totally. I would watch what my brothers would play, and
Yeah.
I would be like,
It's so funny though, and
I'm just too sensitive.
this is very anecdotal, and I don't really need to talk about this, but I find that if
But here we go.
I'm talking about it anyway. Well, mostly because I imagine you might have a kid like this. I find video games so much less scary than movies.
Huh.
I do not like horror movies. Basically at all. Like I can watch them, but oftentimes it is like less fun. I don't enjoy them. But horror video games I tend to like more.
That's
Do you
interesting.
think it's because you can control?
Yeah, I think there's a
Yeah.
little bit of control there for sure. It's one of those things where I just like I think for me, and this is a whole can of worms, and we don't have to open it up here, but you could open it up at home.
Take these worms.
Take these worms home.
When there is a level of disconnect for me when it's an animated character and not a human.
Yeah, that totally makes sense.
Like, and horror movies, I appreciate the art of them as far as I can.
Yeah.
But at some point it's like, that is a real human. And like my empathy is kicking in too much, or my sympathy or whatever you want to call it. Like
totally. My brain doesn't know that that's fictional.
yeah. And I know it is fictional, but like
Yeah.
it works on me. Whereas like games, I'm like, oh, this is ridiculous. This is over the top. That is gruesome. Like I can look at it and say, that's pretty violent. That's pretty gruesome. But I'm also like, this isn't a real person. I know it's not real. I'm playing a video game. I'm in my house. I feel my controller. I feel my keyboard,
So I kind of feel the opposite way with like
interesting.
horror movies and stuff. Like I think, or like we'll say The Last of Us just because
Yeah.
we've mentioned it, but like that scenario would never happen. And so even though
yeah.
there are humans
Yeah.
being killed, because they're being killed by weird zombies, I can
Yeah.
watch it and absorb it and not be impacted by it. But like watching like true crime
Yeah.
or like watching a movie of like a kidnapping or something is like I could not handle that.
Yeah, I
So
mean,
it's like interesting.
I agree with you there too. I think like actual like reality television is much more horrifying than not reality television in my mind, almost always. Like it was when we talked about Squid Game and Beast Games in the same sentence, and I remember
Yes.
I like crashed out of like
Beast Games.
Squid Game is so less horrifying than Beast Games, even though the content is like PG versus like R.
Yeah.
Like Beast Games was like, this is so manipulative, and it really bothered me. Whereas like Squid Game, I'm like, wow, they're telling a dark story, and that is storytelling. That's what we do with our stories, is we talk about the boogeyman in the closet, the things that scare us, so that we can better understand our lives.
Yeah.
I don't know if putting John from California into a scenario where he has to betray his two best friends is actually helping us understand the world in like reality, right? Maybe it's helping us understand human nature. What was your question, Evan? Do you remember it?
Well, my question was kind of about to what extent do you think most maybe younger players would
Yeah.
be able to mentally differentiate in the way that you're talking about with a violent, gory video game like Resident Evil?
Yeah,
Requiem?
I mean, you definitely get better at that as you get older. And so I think I will say this about Resident Evil Requiem, very popular. Part of why we're talking about it. I actually probably wouldn't recommend it for a teen under 17. Like it definitely has a lot of like pretty brutal violence in it.
Which is technically, I mean, that's
yeah.
the M rating and
Yes.
ESRB, right? Is
Yeah, there's-
17 and up is the recommendation.
There's
right?
a little bit of swearing in it, but for sure that is the primary thing that they're rating it off of. And,
The violence.
Yeah, and there's definitely moments. There's a big blood theme in this game, and so if blood bothers you, like one of the characters, like what you do is you like gather blood from the ground.
Very biblical.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, if you read through
Which Bible?
Leviticus, there's a lot of blood in there too.
Well, the blood in
yeah.
the land cries
Yes,
out.
yeah,
That's what I was thinking of.
When
so-
they gather the blood as they go through Israel.
It just sounds like something that'd be in the Old Testament.
Yeah. No,
If you
All
were,
right,
though,
you have questions. I know you do, Irene.
If you had a teen that was like 14, 15 that really wanted to play this game, because I don't really think that, yes, it has a 17 rating, but so often it is kind of marketed towards, those mid-teens. How would you like approach that as a parent? Like, I mean, what would you think? What would you say?
Well, there's definitely like a one correct answer to this question. I'm just kidding. I think one of the hard things with video games specifically, and it actually shares it with novels, is it's really hard to engage with the product before you let your teen see it. Like you have to play a video game for 20 hours to see everything that's in it. We have to read this 600-page novel to give it to your kid because they want to read it.
Yeah,
it's hard.
so
You could just to throw it in. You could watch a playthrough on YouTube or Twitch or something. Right? You could totally get somebody to reveal for you what is in the game without having to buy it yourself.
For sure. And
life hack.
That is one of those things. It still takes time to watch.
Yeah,
and
for sure.
You might skip over something that might bother you and you totally missed it, and then your kid plays it. And then
there's no way to
be
able to look at all of it, is what you're saying.
And so I would say one, I've always said this, it's always the parent's job to decide what comes into the home, and that's good. That is a good thing. And if you're like, we're not going to play this, that should stand. Your kid might get really frustrated with you. I think it's understanding what type of media has my son or daughter, probably son, like when it comes to games, especially games like this, often a son. What type of media has my son already engaged with? And do I think they will enjoy it and be able to process through it, or will it kind of consume their brain in a way that's unhealthy? I think the thing when we talk about violence in video games, the thing I always come back to is the student playing the game because it's violent? And if the answer is yes, that's a red flag. But if the answer is, like I said earlier, I like the game, I think it's fun, I like the horror of it or whatever it is, I think it's a different conversation.
Yeah.
Because I have encountered a lot of young men who play games because they're violent. They're excited about the violence in Grand Theft Auto. They're excited about the violence in whatever game they're playing, and that's a red flag.
Yeah.
I think that is a red flag as a parent. That should get your radar up. But if it's like, well, I think the games are really good, I love the story, I think it's really interesting, that's a different conversation because they're coming to it with a more mature perspective. Like that is what's happening.
Right. So it's about understanding the capacity of your individual child and talking through that is probably the best way to approach it.
And getting at why are you interested in this?
Yeah.
I really think that's a great and very subtle distinction. Is it because you like violence, or is it because you're compelled by a particular story? Those are different conversations.
Yeah.
Totally. And the Christian impulse is just like, is this good or bad?
Right.
And that isn't ultimately helpful with things like video games, because that is helpful when it comes to issues related to our salvation and like really important pieces of theology of like, yes, this is true, this is not. But when it comes to this, I think so often, I think Access does a great job of talking about the nuance of things, but I think a lot of Christians don't have the tools to discern things like this because they're like, oh, this mom lets her kid do this video game, that's bad. That's a bad game because of X, Y, and Z. When it's like you said, every kid is different. Like when I think about my older siblings, I have 3 older brothers, and they're all wildly different. And so it's like to just apply like this should be the same for all of them isn't really acknowledging that there are different levels of maturity and development. Even if they're younger, maybe they're 15, but they're way more mature than your 17-year-old, and they might be able to play it. Yeah. That kind of thing.
Yeah, I also think right now it's a great time to be like, games are often just as good if you play them 2 years later. And so there's always the wait option.
Yeah, totally.
And I think that's actually kind of fun. Like games, it's interesting, as a technology, games have kind of slowed down in terms of their development. Like when I was growing up, it was like the new consoles were like huge leaps. And now it's like, you can kind of play. Yeah. It's very similar now. And so oftentimes it's like, hey, this is a $70 game. What if we don't buy it right now? What if we wait for a sale, come Christmas, and then we can have this conversation again? And like, you can totally have those conversations, and it doesn't even have to be about the content. If you want to avoid that conversation, you can just say, hey, let's just maybe wait on it and see if we can get it on sale or whatever. I think it's fun that games are that way now, where they're still really good 2 years later. And you might miss the zeitgeist and people talking about it right now. Right. But you can still kind of wait on games. And maybe your 15-year-old, when they're 17, they can go back and be like, oh yeah, that game was really good. I enjoyed it. And maybe they wouldn't have when they were 15, you know? So,
Meanwhile, people are getting older and hopefully becoming more mature along the way.
Yeah, which is part of, that's what I'm saying a little bit.
Is there a question that you think could start a useful conversation about this?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many conversations around this. You can talk about games, you can talk about violence in media, and maybe that's one of the more interesting ones of what's a show or what's a piece of media. I feel like we need a better term for all of the things that we watch and engage with.
I agree.
Yeah, I'm like,
I've run into that.
Media is
No,
like,
especially if you're trying to reference something and you don't remember if it was a TikTok, a reel, a tweet, like whatever. And I'm just like, that content I saw.
Maybe a way to put it is there violence in a fictional story that bothered you? And why do you think it bothered you? I think it's always an interesting, because you might actually find some very interesting things. Like there's some violence like that I find like doesn't bother some people, but really bothers other people. Like for me, anything that's like against an innocent person really bothers me. And so you might find those types of conversations with your kid, and you might learn something about them and the way that the Lord has wired their heart.
All right, final thing this week. As buzz about the Olympics begins to fade, women's figure skating gold medalist Alysa Liu continues to have a viral moment. And just a quick editor's note on this. We looked up a few different videos to try to confirm pronunciation. Different videos of her saying her own name. Have her pronouncing it Alysa, Liu. So I don't know what's true.
So we're sorry.
And
we love you. If you're listening, Alyssa.
Alysa. Right. If you're out there, Alysa/Alysa, we apologize. With vertical streaks of bleach in her hair.
So cute.
Which she attributes to wanting to be a tree.
Wait, I've never heard that.
Yeah.
It's tree inspired.
Oh, cute.
It's tree inspired.
We were talking about tree rings earlier. That's what I was talking about.
Tree rings.
Love it.
Yep. You know how when you cut the tree
She's
open.
Adorable.
There's the rings. That's what she's going for with her hair. A piercing she did herself. What's it called?
Smile piercing, I think.
A smile piercing?
She did that herself?
Yeah.
Did it herself?
Which kind of terrifies me inside your mouth.
Yeah.
Hey.
Pretty brutal.
She's clearly got discipline. Hey.
Yeah.
That's making me cringe more
Fortitude.
than anything in Resident Evil Requiem.
Okay. I heard that she did it herself when I read an article yesterday, and I've like been thinking about it the last 24 hours.
Oh.
I'll just keep remembering. I'm like,
yeah, it's intense. It's easy to read the appearance of Alysa/Alysa on
let's just
the
commit to
eyes.
Let's just commit to Alyssa.
I'm going to say Alysa.
Yeah.
It's easy to read it as an act of rebellion in a sport that's often marked by, ballerina buns, red lipstick, things of that sort. But, getting to the gold for Alysa required more than just rebelling against an aesthetic status quo. It required resilience. And there's this quote that she gave to 60 Minutes where she said, "I'd love struggling, actually. It makes me feel alive." I want to use that as my first question to you, Jenna. What do you think it takes for someone to be able to say, "I love struggling"?
Yeah, I think when you look into Alyssa's background a little bit, she did figure skating from a young age, and then she decided to take a break when she was 16 and then come back a couple years later. And that is not encouraged in athletic spaces, especially when you're younger. It's like you're in your prime, and like to give your whole life away to the sport. And I was reading a piece from The Guardian, and she was talking about how she wanted to prioritize family and just be like being with the people in her life, which is really cool. And the article is called "If There Was No One on Earth, I Would Still Skate." Alysa Liu on her remarkable figure skating comeback. And, as Americans, we love a comeback story. It's just like, I love that. But I think for her, it required a break. And she talks about during her break, laying on the ice and just listening to music and then just letting herself be inspired. So there's this emphasis on play in all of her interviews that I've seen about her finding so much joy in what she's doing. So I think for so long she built that discipline and then she really let herself enjoy it. And so I think that she still requires struggle because she's on the ice for hours a day. But she has so much joy infused in it. If you look up pictures of her, it is so cute. She's just doing her figure skating with this biggest smile on her face while she's doing it. And it just looks like she's actually having an amazing time. And I feel like so often with younger athletes, it's like they exercise 12 hours a day. Like they don't see their friends. They don't they're really dialed in and they're an amazing performer, but they're not like oozing with like joy. And you can just see the picture when she wins and she's jumping. She's like, she still looks like she's like 2 feet in the air. But it's really cool.
CJ, I heard you open your mouth. Are you
Keep doing that.
Are you about to say something?
I feel like if you've watched a lot of Olympic sports, you're very familiar with the part where especially the figure skaters, like they get off the ice and they're like taking their shoes off and they're like looking at their scores and they get their scores and they're always like, there's like nod. And you're right, like there isn't as like they definitely enjoy it. Like
100%.
And maybe they don't, but I will say to your point, like my niece and my nephew, especially my niece, is a pretty good swimmer in they live in Alaska, so she's a very good swimmer in the state of Alaska. And her coach basically told my brother and my sister-in-law, like, oh yeah, like if she misses a week of swimming, it's bad. Like if she doesn't get in the pool, she misses like a week or even a day basically of getting in the pool, it will set back her growth. So that's the sort of perspective that Jenna is talking about. If you're unfamiliar with that sort of perspective, that's what they're talking about. And so when they're
Just
like
ruthless.
We're like, hey, we want to send her to a camp where she can like serve, like a ministry camp and serve for the summer. That's like a big decision, right? Of like, you're hearing from coaches who are really often well-meaning people. Nothing against, just to be really clear, this isn't a hit piece on people who coach students, because this is what they often are told to communicate, but also what they do communicate, that, hey, if you take a summer off, you'll miss your chance to ever be a high-level swimmer or a high-level athlete, which is so interesting with her,
right?
Where maybe she's just so good at it that she was able to take that break. Like she had just such natural, because there's like obviously talent and development, and they're kind of two separate things. Like you can have a lot of talent but not be that great at something. Like you can pick it up really quickly, but it takes work to get to a high level. And maybe she just had a starting place that was higher, but it's one of those things where like, you have to have that mentality of like, I like to suffer, like suffering and like trying hard and struggling is like a good thing as I run into obstacles. Like you have to have that perspective to be really, really great in those spaces. But it's so interesting that it's like, I want to take a break. And she took a break and came back and won for the first time, at least in American figure skating, in a very long time.
Since 2002.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it is really interesting what you point out, because she loves struggling because she likes working through something and trying to grow, but she also clearly knew when she needed to back off. There's an article from Elle that's kind of describing her as a Gen Z icon, and it kind of describes her life journey as she burnt out, she left, she figured out who she actually was outside of the sport, she came back with something the first version of her couldn't have had, genuine joy. And genuine joy, it turns out, is technically superior to fear-motivated excellence. Because, this is a quote from her, "For me, my balance is my social life, skating, and school. I think it's crucial because we are humans before being athletes." So it's that interesting, like, I think her quote about loving struggling is so cool, honestly, and encouraging, that there's like a level of upholding the discipline that it requires to be truly excellent at something. But also knowing when a break would be helpful. You know, that's a hard thing to work out.
Totally. I loved in all of the performance videos that I watched, in the intro, it would say like, Alysa says that she's just here to share her art. Like that was something that she kept saying. And so I think for her, it was like a creative expression. And I think that she got that depth when she took her break, which is really cool. And I've seen so many comments on these videos of people being like, this makes me want to go back to like the sport that I played growing up, just because like CJ was talking about with your niece, there's this idea of like, if you're good at it, then you need to give your entire life to it. And there's something really spiritually good about giving ourselves to something like that, to commit to something, to commit to suffering in a certain sense. But then it just gets a little extreme.
And to be positive, I think that is one of the things that what Alyssa is saying is one of the things I think sports is really good at teaching, if it's well discipled, is that, hey, when you encounter adversity, that does not mean you should run away. That means you should push into it harder.
Yeah.
But I think you're right. I think there is a level of discernment that is required to say, actually, this adversity is negative. Like,
Exactly.
I have some examples. I won't be specific, but I have some examples in my life where I definitely should have walked away way sooner. But I was like, I'm not a quitter. I'm not going to like back out of this situation. And so like, which I'm proud of that part of myself, that I don't run away from conflict and hard things. At the same time, there are times where I maybe should have been like, I should have taken a break. And so, but I do think sports are really good at, if they're discipled well, they're so good at teaching young people to do that, because they're going to run into a place where they can't do what they want to do. They can't hit that shot in basketball. They can't do that turn in figure skating. They can't do this or that. And they have to look themselves in the mirror and say, I'm going to commit to learning how to do this, even though I'm bad at it.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm hitting my knee a bunch. But I love that about sports. But it has to be discipled well in a way that's like, this is how we learn how to have tenacity and grit.
Right.
You know?
And resilience.
Yeah.
Resilience, right. And, you know, I want to ask you in a second if you have any thoughts on a potentially interesting conversation starter. But I'll throw in also, I feel like, how can we tell when something is something we need to push through or something that we should walk away from? That's a very tough thing to try to answer, but I think it's very important, because there's the value of discipline, like we're talking about, but then it's also, you know, I'm going to keep punching my fist against this brick wall. Well, it's like, maybe you should stop if it's actually not going to get you anywhere. There are some things that just aren't going to play out. So how do we tell the difference between those two things?
I mean, I think if you've fallen out of in love with something and you're just like, all it is grit and stress and anxiety and sleeplessness, like, I think that might be a great time to take pause. But if you're like, I still love this and this is hard, but when I succeed and when I do well, I love it. You know what I mean? So I think there's a difference then. If you're completely miserable and it's making your life hard and you're making the lives of the people around you hard, because it's like, then it probably is coming to a point where it's like, is this still serving you? You know what I mean? So I think that some discernment with like how it's impacting your life and the lives of people around you. It probably would be helpful to have some self-awareness.
Yeah. I think she shows too that, I love what you said, Irene, about like, maybe it's time to take a pause on this, take a break. And she came back and she was way better than before, and she brought something else. And so I think even the conversation with your kids too, of like, do we need to take a break from this right now?
Yeah.
Because CJ, with your example, a break feels really high stakes, but it might be the best thing for them. And that a break doesn't mean never doing it again.
Yeah.
Because I feel like it's like, okay, we're going to do like foot on the gas, 100 miles per hour. We're stopped. And it's like, maybe there's something in between.
For sure.
Yeah.
Why do you think Gen Z resonates with her in this way? Because I think, maybe painting with a broad brush, but I think a lot of adults would say, well, Gen Z isn't good at this. They don't have grit and determination and resilience.
That's what every generation says about the next generation.
I absolutely agree with you. I do not agree with that statement.
Totally.
I'd be curious to hear from Jenna on how you would respond to that question.
Yeah, I think I've felt very seen by her emphasis on play. I think is really cool. And I think just in our very like therapeutic culture, there's a lot of conversation on like, heal your inner child. Like, what did little CJ and little Irene like to do? Like, go back to that. And like, yeah, it sounds like a little kooky and silly, but so much of our modern life does not include play. And it's like very important for development for children, but it's also important for flourishing for adults. And so I think her emphasis on play in an area where when I think of the Olympics, I think that is the ultimate like pinnacle of discipline. And so I think seeing play integrated there and joy is really, really cool. And I think too, just with so many crazy things happening in the country right now, I've seen so many comments of like, America needs someone like this right now. Like, she's uniting people, like people love watching her. And so I think there's that element too of just like being able to, like the joy that she's radiating from her performance is just really life-giving, I think, for people to watch. But I think so some fun fact about me, I've never played a sport in my life. Never on a team sport. Never did that
now,
stuff.
Do you mean you've never in a league, or like you've never, not once, ever gone out
She's
onto
never seen a basketball in her life.
seen
No. I went to lots of my friends' games, and all of my
Hey,
friends were
that's-
athletes.
I love that.
So
Way to support.
yeah. I never knew what was happening, but I was like, one of my friends, Ella, was, she still does basketball, but in high school, me and my friend would go to her games, and I was like, this feels easy to follow because the ball is large, but like, yeah, and
I've
then
seen the basketball.
so
before.
I've seen it, but
Sorry, I lied to you, everyone. Jenna,
But-
I can confirm. Just in, Jenna has seen a basketball.
I have. Don't worry.
good.
So I think for me, I don't have a personal experience with athletics, but I have had experiences of like, do I fully give myself over to this thing, taking a break from it and falling in love with it deeper? I think that comes with me with writing and content. Like when I just went on a trip for a couple weeks and I like took a break from writing, and it's like the longest I've gone without writing in a couple years. And it was really sweet. Like it was nice to have a break, but then I came back and I was like, I love this. Like this is good. And so I think I kind of saw that with her, but so many comments I see from people that used to be athletes are just like, wow, this is so cool that like she's not just saying like this idea of, or she's not just showing this concept of like having fun, but she also like putting her money where her mouth is and winning gold. Like she's also like showing that like you can do this and be at like the highest caliber of your sport, which is really cool that like you don't have to choose one or the other.
Yeah.
I think her joy like transcends just being an athlete. Like my daughter texted me and she said, "Mom, you have to watch her skate. The way her face looks when she skates is
It's
how I
so-
feel when I'm acting." She does theater.
Oh, wow.
And so it's like they're able to take what she's doing and seeing this joy and this love and apply it to whatever they're doing. And I think that is the joy that we're seeing, and like to be able to play and love what you're doing.
Totally.
is so important.
Yeah. I'm really intrigued by the article that I talked about, the title, "If There Was No One on Earth, I Would Still Skate." So I wonder the question, if there was no one on Earth, would fill in the blank, because I don't want to change all
That
the
would be
tenses.
sad.
But oh my gosh. It'd be, if there was no one on Earth, I would still blank. So I think for me, I would say I would still write, even though no one would read it. I would still deeply enjoy doing that. I would still run. I would still swim. I would still act. I would still do these things. And obviously it kind of falls apart when you think about like people watch you do those things, and those things are not ultimately, but often serve other people. So it'd be kind of confusing to take it to its logical end. But this idea of like, if there's no one watching, like what do you still want to be doing?
Right. What is valuable to you to pursue apart from the audience approval you may or may not
exactly.
get? Yeah.
Exactly.
We're back to moving in silence.
We're back.
We did it.
Oh my gosh.
Full circle.
Full circle.
Wow.
Thanks for tuning in to the Roundtable this week. On your way out, here's a quick survey of some of the rest of the cultural landscape. Number 1, early reviews for the new game Pokémon Pokopia have been enthusiastic, with critics comparing it to a blend of Minecraft's creative mode and Animal Crossing's relaxed village life. The game focuses more on building and exploration than traditional Pokemon battles. Number 2, Apple is stepping into the budget laptop market with the new $599 MacBook Neo. The price places it much closer to the Chromebooks and Windows laptops that many schools recommend for students. Number 3, rumors that Zendaya and Tom Holland secretly got married started after Zendaya's stylist casually told reporters the wedding had already happened.
That's the British historian, Tom Holland.
The classic
we
joke.
gotta go the other way with the
Classic
joke.
joke, man. Officially, the couple hasn't confirmed anything, but fans online are in full detective mode. Number 4, about 40% of Gen Z and millennials say spiritual advice from AI can be just as trustworthy as advice from a pastor. According,
anything
CJ?
to unpack there, or
This was a survey sponsored by a tech platform called Glue, which does AI.
yeah.
I wish we could talk about this a little bit.
And Barna. So
But
collaboration there.
There's definitely a lot to talk about there with your student if you want to. We don't have time to talk about it here. But.
For sure. Many young adults say they already use AI tools for prayer, Bible study, and spiritual questions. So this is a deepening of an already present trend.
We need more people to disciple them.
Yes. It's because
It's almost like it would be less vulnerable to share with an anonymous robot than a person.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, that's the appeal, I think, in many instances.
And someone that affirms anything you say.
Sure.
also the lack of like someone to connect with.
Exactly.
Like,
Someone that's available 24/7.
Sure. / probably. Do I want to go to my pastor and admit that I'm struggling with this question or doubt?
Yeah.
I don't know, but I could go to this AI bot and be like, hey, is the Trinity real?
I mean, like there's such a like we talk about the loneliness epidemic. Like I think both are true. Like maybe it's not. Maybe it's a confession thing. Maybe it's just like I really don't have the friends or the pastor or the discipleship, and that's the heartbreaking.
Yeah. We just made a video about a piece of research from Fuller Youth Institute, and one of the top things about spiritual guidance in Gen Alpha's life that they say that they want someone who listens without judging them. And that feels like kind of what everyone's talking about a little bit, where it's like it is easier to go to Robart than your youth pastor, because your youth pastor might look at you. Robart.
I was like, do I say Robart back to him? But
No, sorry. If you say something wrong in front of me, I'm just going to say it back to you.
That's okay. That's the way everyone else in this room is. So
Let's hope I don't say anything wrong.
So anyway, if you say something to your youth pastor and they look at you with this crazy look of like, hey, I smoked weed last night. Like that's not a good
totally.
So they're gonna go to someone. So it's I was talking with a group of youth leaders in my city and in my church who were saying we basically practice what we call they're not shocked face.
Yeah.
Like they were talking about that without using those words. It was so funny. They were like,
shocked
we had
face.
to learn how to stop reacting to what the students would tell us.
Right.
Because that would communicate judgment.
I can still remember my small group leader having a negative reaction to something I shared, like in small group, and I've been being like, "Ooh, I'm not telling you anything anymore." Yeah. Anyway,
that's number 4.
Yep,
that was number 4.
Let's wrap up.
No, it's still worth talking about, but maybe
we
more
can talk about it for 100 years.
Oh, right, and maybe more next week. For now, number 5, energy drinks were once marketed almost entirely to young men, with branding tied to extreme sports and masculinity.
Sport rush.
Sports maxing. Now,
Deviant.
companies are launching pastel-colored cans and fruitier flavors aimed at women, including cotton candy,
Berry Dream,
which is delicious at a carnival, but deeply questionable as a beverage.
Totally. Irene can say that she hates the cotton candy alone.
Shut it down.
I'm team blue slush.
We'll have links in the show notes if you want to explore any of these further. For now, goodbye from all of us, and we'll see you back here next week.
Bye. Cheers.
Thanks so much for watching. This podcast is made possible because of our generous donor community, which is called The Table. To help us support more parents and other caring adults through culture translation, we'd love to invite you to check out The Table by clicking right here. Also, if you've been impacted by what we do, would you consider letting us know with a like, comment, and/or subscription, as well as sharing this episode with someone who you think could benefit? Thanks for caring about having intentional conversations with the next generation.